team. Yes, I'm part of the Journal Club admin team and also the founder of Ada Africa, a space that has been really, really powerful for me, just journeying together with scholars. I'm also in school. I'm taking a second master's in healthcare management at Strathmore University. And so I can really relate to the journey that we are all on. So today we have the pleasure of hosting an amazing speaker, and she's also an amazing professional. I've known her work through the support she supports our organization in the areas of just founders wellness and just helping researchers to cope better with their journey. So it's been an amazing journey with Josephine. And today we have the pleasure of her coming in to speak to us about a very important aspect of our journey as researchers, which is coping. We are juggling a lot. We are really in the cracks of professional life, family life. We are growing a lot of other things. We have a lot of responsibility. And at the center of it all, we need to know how to cope and navigate that journey. So Josephine is the founder of an organization called Beyonder. She's a counseling psychologist. And what she does individual therapy, and her specialty is mainly on young people, young men, young ladies, helping them to navigate their journeys. And she'll speak more about that. And she also is supporting Ada Africa with her consulting service to help us also make sure our mentorship is centered on the values of respect, the values of wellness, and the values of cura personalis. So she's really helping us, and the new mentorship programs you will see from us will be having a very strong aspect of wellness. So let me welcome you, Josephine, and take us through what you have for us today. Karibu. For the rest of us, let's keep introducing ourselves on chat so that we know who is here. Over to you, Josephine.
Just a moment.
So introduce yourself on chat. Let's know who's here. Okay, karibu, Josephine.
Hello, everyone. My name is Josephine Munene, as you've heard. I am the founder of Beyonder, which is a wellness consultancy. My background, as you've heard, is in counseling psychology and social innovation, but I was not always that. I actually evolved my career. I started off as a nutritionist and then decided to go into counseling and then social innovation. So social innovation is a way of solving social problems in a sustainable way. And how it connects to counseling is that using the listening skills, in psychology, I am able to tailor needs assessment to really connect with the person who's in need. And then we are able to design a program that is wellness-led, that actually meets the need. So at the end of the day, you put the person in need or the person with the area you want to solve for at the center, something called human-centered design. So even at Ada, for me, my role has been to have a critical look at the programming, see if Ada is actually embracing the values that they've put out. And even I was there to help Ada clarify their values. So it's not just about following values, it is being able to clarify your values, clarify your vision, your mission, and really be able to now adhere to it on a daily basis. So even picking this topic about a personal coping plan, it is connected to something that I believe in called intentional living. So what is intentional living? It is when you are working towards being self-aware, actively coping with the stresses of life, and figuring out what your contribution to the world is. So when I started my journey to like sort of figure out what is my contribution. You know, it started from a point of wellness. I went to therapy. I clarified my values. I worked on the issues that I had, and they allowed me, all these obstacles that I had that were holding me back, they allowed me to design, you know, a career that I'm very proud of, because I don't know if there is someone with my combination, but you know, nutrition, counseling, and social innovation, and it allows me to speak about wellness from a very holistic perspective. So that is a little bit about me. I also, on other personal areas, I live in Nanyuki. I made the conscious choice of leaving the city. I grew up in the village, so I feel right at home. And it allows me to look at wellness from a different perspective, because I'm able to design programs like retreats that people can come here in Nanyuki, away from the city, to just take a moment to breathe and recalibrate, rejuvenate, and go back having more clarity. So that is a little bit about me. And thank you so much, Aurelia, for your introduction.
So over to you, Josephine. You can get us started on the session. I've made you a co-host, and karibuni, anyone who's joined before we had, when we had already started, please introduce yourself on chat. Keep yourself muted so that we can hear what we have for us, Josephine has for us today. And yes, let's enjoy and learn together.
Right. So because you're here that I work in wellness, we are going to take what I call a mindfulness moment, even before we go into the presentation. I want us to make sure that we are present in this moment. I want us to think about, why did we choose to, you know, not sleep in, not go, you know, do some cleaning or go out or just have a lazy day today or do something else? Why didn't we choose to prioritize anything other than this training? Like, why are you here? So I'd like for you to, first of all, before you jot that down, like, why are you here? I want you to, you know, take a moment to check in with your body. You know, are you hydrated? You know, they say we wake up dehydrated. So I'd like to speak to hydrated brains. Do you have some water with you? Have you even taken breakfast? So just take a moment, 5 minutes, to check in with yourself. Is your environment comfortable? Are you on a comfortable chair? You know, even though I can't see on camera, but it's good to make sure that for the next hour and a half, you're seated in a space where you're optimizing this moment and you're optimizing, you know, this opportunity you've given yourself to learn something new. All right. So you can take a moment.
So
5 minutes. So we will stop at 9:19. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Josephine. So let me also grab my water. I'm feeling a bit dehydrated. Then have your paper and pen, because as we said the other time, when people come for webinars, it's very important to ask yourself, why am I in this webinar? And what do I want to get out of it? So take a moment and just write that down. You can even, I always also have the practice of writing the date of the webinar, what was it about, so that you can have a follow-up. So just those few minutes, then we start off. So we are starting off from a wellness point. Raymond, you can pause the recording a bit. I hope you had your wellness moment, and over to you, Josephine.
All right. Maybe I can hear from a few people, what they did in their wellness moment. What, had they not done to settle down, to be comfortable, to be present? Maybe Aurelia, you can help me moderate that.
Yes, let's hear what you did. For me, I had some strong tea, strong cold tea. So I feel good. What else? What other wellness things did you do? You can just unmute or put on chat, because I even felt I have relaxed. In Nairobi, the way even not Nairobi, just generally these days, even waiting for something for 1 minute is such a big problem for people. And I felt myself now just waiting and calmly waiting for the session to start. Thank you, Jackie. Jackie says she's finished her cereal. Good. That's nice. Okay, war socks. Oh yeah, it's cold. I've drank some warm water. Cool. Let's take care of ourselves, researchers. Lovely. Okay, Josephine, over to you now.
All right. I am so happy to hear, you took that moment to really take care of yourself. Sometimes we underestimate, how much we need to take care of ourselves and how we need to be intentional. And I'm hoping by the time we finish this session, you'll have had a taste of what intentional living means, that you don't just let happen life. You don't just let life happen to you, you make life happen. And for me, that's what I like to do, that whatever I can control, I take charge of that. What I can't control, I'm able to now know how to cope. So I'm going to start sharing. Just a minute. Okay. So welcome once again to our topic of the day, how to create a personal coping plan for postgraduate researchers. So as I was preparing for this topic, I was like, wow, who said I have anything to say about this topic? I am not a postgraduate researcher. I designed my own master's. When I decided to be a counselor, I concurrently went to 2 schools, Amani Counseling and Training Center, and also I got a scholarship to Amani Institute to learn social innovation. And so I really wanted to become a transformative counselor. I had looked at counseling and could see that, we were using the knowledge of, that has been tested on white men and, through the theories. And I really wanted to understand, how can I, with my knowledge, being part of the African context, create my own knowledge, in the sense that through practice, through research, through learning on the ground, that I'm able to come up with something that allows me to actually help contextualize the kind of interventions that I have. So for me, starting Beyonder was about how can I create promotive and preventive interventions, co-create promotive and preventive interventions to help people address their wellness issues. And so that's why, even for me, coping is very important. I only train on coping and coping in different sectors. And even before I stepped into this, I had to understand what is the experience of a postgraduate researcher. So I spoke to a few, and the one thing that came out is the struggle with confidence and the struggle with competence, in the sense that someone is required to master skills that they have no idea how to master them because the system does not teach them in a practical way that allows them to utilize them. The second thing, competence, that someone does not feel confident, that they can use these skills to deliver a research, that even after finishing their postgraduate studies, doing the dissertation, the publication, the conferencing requirements, that they can duplicate that knowledge, maybe in their organizations, that their own organization. And so I also spoke to a supervisor and I asked the supervisor, so what is the formula for winning? How do you actually engage with a student? And how do you feel that this student is doing their part? And so the supervisor said, it's about someone being aware that it is a journey, having what can I say? A reality check, knowing that to do a master's, it takes a lot. So they have to prioritize. If they want to study or they want to have a business, that they have to make it a priority. Secondly, do they have the skill of building a relationship with a supervisor, with a mentor, with peers that allow them to communicate their needs and actually be helped? So from feedback from some of the postgraduate students, it was like people actually struggle with knowing how to approach the supervisor. So the supervisor said it is having a relationship that is based also on friendship without going over some boundaries, right? That if you're going through something personal and it is affecting the delivery on timelines, then you are able to communicate that. And thirdly, it is actually respecting the timelines, knowing that a supervisor does not just have you. They have, many students. Some schools, they have one supervisor supervising 5 postgraduate students and 3 PhD students. So can you imagine if you delay on a timeline and there is a backlog of people waiting to be assigned to this supervisor, a whole system is affected. So knowing that is the space I'm walking into this day. And the other thing to mention is that even though I did a diploma, I still did research. And I love this value held by Ada Africa, that you're trying to remove the hierarchy from research, that research is for scholars, at a certain type or level of scholars. So yes, I did my research and I went through all the challenges. I had to come up with a problem. I had to know to use. I had to, data, analyze data, do a mock defense. So at the end of the day, it is still the same journey that you took, but on a different level. So that is my introduction to this session. And maybe Aurelia, you can help me just gather 3 insights about what I've said, what are people resonating with, and if I am speaking to the right people this morning.
Thank you, Josephine. One of the things you said is that 2 struggles for postgraduate students is competence and confidence, feeling not competent and feeling not confident. So what do you think about that? Is it something you can relate? And all the things that she's talked about, the supervisor perspective, what is the supervisor feeling about the journey of research? Do maybe people underestimate what is required in the journey? Are we also able to communicate our needs? We also know some supervision relationships are very difficult and they've taken us places we've never known we could go to. So let me hear from you. Anyone who would like to just share briefly what resonates with you? Okay, respecting the timelines. Would you mind explaining a little bit, Stephen? Unmute if you can. You've even put it as a hashtag respect the timelines. Are we struggling to honor the timelines with our supervisor? Is that a point of struggle for many of us? your given comments that are due in 2 weeks, and you'll see your supervisor in 6 months. Is that what you mean, Stephen? Any other thing you've resonated with in your journey?
Good morning. What I've learned is when you are working on your research, you're not alone. The supervisor is supervising many, so it's like one has to have their own personal plan to reach their goals on the desired timeline.
Thank you. Thank you, Caroline. Thank you so much. Yes, the supervisor has many, and so a plan for you would help. Chris, I've seen your hand up.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, yes, I'm Dr. Ayabe, and I want my contribution really and experience is that a number of students, as you mentioned, yes, one day supervisor has many students that are being supervised or are waiting, but also the commitment of the students is normally something that you actually see as if would it be a question, and you wonder how. Remember, I would say that the supervisor is more of a parent that you get when you reach the level of doing the research, and therefore it's actually you to be obedient and follow the guidance that is being given. And a number of times I've seen, kind of commotion. There is competition between the students and the supervisor, and that often does not end well, and especially on the part of the students. So my advice always is to say these are just like parents. So you get to a level where you realize that your parent might be having one shortcoming, might be this way, but then this is the parent you have. You just have to do the best you can with them, and that way you really make a very good outcome of that supervision. Thank you.
Thank you, Ayabe. You said about the parent relationship, and I think just like we don't choose parents, unfortunately for our context, we also don't choose supervisors. So we are kind of matched. It's not a match made in heaven, it's a match made on earth that one has to make work. I can see Josephine is saying you seek immediate feedback on your work from your supervisor, but this is not possible because the supervisor has a lot of students. So you might be very diligent in giving feedback, but you find that your feedback is coming a month later. So there's also that, how the system is also interferes a lot with that relationship. Chris, you had your hand up, then we can go back to Josephine. Okay. Okay, thank you for the reflections. Over to you, Josephine.
Oh, okay, you can't hear me.
Oh, okay, yeah, we can hear you now. Sorry, yes.
Oh, okay.
We
Yeah,
hear
for
you.
me, analogy. I was saying analogy of parent, because I feel like the bad boy in my supervision story, where I'm not living up to expectations of my supervisor, so I'm hiding, and everybody knows about my research except my supervisor. But there's also that part about competence and confidence, because I feel I should be doing more and should be doing better, but I am not. And therefore, I feel the last person to find out is my supervisor. So I haven't talked to her, I haven't talked to my supervisor in a while, because I feel I don't have anything concrete for them. But also competence. I get so stuck, and I think I shouldn't be. Whereas I'm also in just one more thing is that in a space where my cohort, where I'm in a space of helping or being there for them, and they're going ahead and they're defending their proposals. And I'm wondering, what am I doing wrong? So there's that whole confusion, and it's not leaving me feeling better. Thanks.
Thanks for sharing, Chris. I will not even add on to that. I want to take it to Josephine to kind of help us figure out all these feelings that accompany us in our research journeys, even the feeling of hiding from your supervisor. Sometimes we have a lot of shame that we carry when we haven't honored our deadline, but sometimes you didn't honor it because you also did not understand what to do. So there's all that confusion in our research journeys that is taking us to places in our lives that we didn't even know we could experience, or emotions we didn't know we could experience. So over to you, Josephine. I can see Modoni resonates. Oh, Josephine had been kicked out. Modoni also resonates with Chris, saying the feeling of inadequacy to take on research, self-doubting yourself, procrastination. I think if there's anything that gives you character development, apart from living in Kenya, it is your research. It really exposes you. They say every transition in life exposes you. And I think research really exposes who we are, because it now shows, are you a procrastinator? Are you, it brings all these things about you that we have to face all the time. So we can relate to that. Josephine, you're back again. Welcome.
Sorry, I dropped off for a minute there. Kindly, you can allow me to share, Aurelia?
Let me make you a co-host.
Yes, yes.
So welcome those who've joined now. We are thinking through our coping journey in the murky waters, soon to be clear waters of research.
Wow. Yes. Maybe even as you're doing that, Aurelia, I want to take this moment to invite you, to write down 3 things that have come to you. Like, these are the 3 areas I am struggling with. And you can, guide that, look at, do you have a personal problem impacting your scholarly journey? Do you have a supervisor issue or institution issue? And do you have a work issue, environment issue, the other things that you do beyond your home? So you look at personal and home, you look at the institution and the work that you do. So just list 3 areas so that even as we are stepping into this, you're working with something in mind that you want to work towards. Because I am not here to give like the formula. I am here to give the tools that I have seen work from social innovation, from psychology, that allow you to create that awareness that allows you to live intentionally. So it starts with intention. What are the 3 challenges that you're facing that you want to have in mind, even as you go through this training? So I want you to jot those down, and don't jot them in terms of a list. You can jot them on each page of your journal so that when you get an insight, you record it under that title. I want this to be as meaningful as possible by the end of this training, that you come out really tapping into your inner wisdom to know exactly what you would like to do, like what a baby step or a flea step would look like after this meeting. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes to just do that. Jot down 3 things.
Those who have joined us just now, we are working on 3 things that we want to work on, 3 challenges that we are facing that we really want to work on and are seeking tools from this session today. So those challenges could be related to a personal problem that is impeding on your journey. It could be a work issue, or it could be the institutional issues, the relationship you have with your supervisor. So Josephine has said, we write each of the challenges on its own page because we want it to be a session where you are actually going to work on something. From here, you'll go and work on something, pole, baby steps. So it's a training that is giving us tools that we can work on our actual problem. So yeah, let me keep quiet now.
I think we have 1 more minute, then we wrap up. All right. Are we all done? Maybe we can just check in to make sure we've not left anyone behind.
Let me see a thumbs up if we are done from at least someone. Just making sure we know we've documented our problem. To know the problem is the first thing. To name the problem is the first step. Josephine, you'll correct me if I'm wrong. Yes, Josephine, people are done. Yes.
Great. All right. So I'm gonna start sharing my screen now. So you've heard me talk about intentional living. I'm just going to scroll up to here. I love this quote. We do not learn from experience. We learn from reflecting on experience. I don't know if you guys have heard of that quote, but the moment I heard that quote, it made so much sense in terms of, you know, sometimes you can see someone doing the same thing over and over and hoping to get different results. And we think it is something wrong with their thinking. But actually, they've not sat with that issue to actually see how it is impacting them. And so that's why I have started with you being present and writing down 3 things. We were trying to reflect on your experience so far so that we start from a point of clarity. So this quote has, I normally use it with all my young adults, and it allows them to see that the only way to actually come up with a plan to do anything, it has to start from a point of reflection. And reflection is not just talking about reflection, is actually intentionally creating time to reflect. And one of the tools I'll be sharing is about, you know, creating micro thinking time and macro thinking time. So micro thinking time will be in the morning when you wake up, when you have a fresh brain that is hydrated, you dedicate that powerful brain before the world wakes up to your goals. That you take that time to just have a moment to ask yourself, okay, what am I, what are the things that are on my mind? What do I actually want to achieve? Macro thinking time is creating moments when you can be alone, even for more than 3 hours. You just go to a space and just relax and get to a space when you tap into your inner wisdom, when all this, the world is quiet, and you can really ask yourself those questions like, what are your goals? Are you headed towards them? And what are the obstacles? So I'm going to proceed from there. Unless someone has had, a powerful insight to share that they feel, this has resonated with them, or they've had it before and, they apply it in their life. All right, so shall I move on, Aurelia?
Yes.
All right. So I love this quote, and that's why you may wonder, why did I say 3? This quote talks about, if you have more than 3 priorities, you have none. It's a book there is a book written by Jim Collins. I'll share in the references, and it allows us to stop this idea that we have to achieve so much in a day. We have to push ourselves to look like we are, putting up the best performance of our life. And sometimes if you have clarity on the 3 most important things in your day, in your week, in your month, in your year, you can actually achieve them, and it is more realistic. So what are we going to look into? We look into what is coping, an effective personal coping plan. Then we'll have, a mindfulness moment, and then tools for developing a personal coping plan, 5-step coping plan breakdown, and then pitfalls of personal coping plans. And we'll look at what does prototyping and iteration actually mean. So what is coping? There are very many definitions of coping. I'm sure you've heard, coping. There is passive coping, active coping. There is well-adjusted coping, maladjusted coping. So there are very many definitions, but the one that I would use as a working definition, it is your response to a stressful situation in terms of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. So when you say a stressful situation, sometimes you can imagine it is traumatic things. It's not only, traumatic things like loss of a job, it's also the good things that happen to us in life. For example, if you get married or have your first child or get a promotion at work, there is a way that you will have to adjust your life to meet the demands of that opportunity that has come to you. So in that adjustment, it also triggers a stress response, because this is something new. This is something that your brain, did not have the, the capacity, the tools ready to deal with. And so it takes some time to actually understand what is happening, how it is impacting you, and how now to deal with the thoughts, the feelings, and behaviors that are being triggered by this opportunity or by this event. Are we okay up to there? Is the definition of coping clear? Maybe just a hand up, just to say, or thumbs up to say we are good to go. Aurelia? All right, then I'll proceed. So what's a personal coping plan? It's an action plan that you base on your values, your support system, your resources, and your personal goals to effectively handle a situation. I will tell you that this is my definition of a personal coping plan, and this has come from how I have observed, working with young adults when they are going through this transition in their development, how all those changes, they have to actually have a coping plan. They have to have a way of coping that will allow them not to succumb to, depression, anxiety, and all these things that could end up into a mental illness. So as I told you, I work on preventative and promotive wellness so that someone does not have to succumb. And even if someone has already been diagnosed with mental illness, these tools are still practical, although they are a bit on the cognitive level. So maybe someone who is really in need, who is maybe in severe depression or anxiety might struggle with them. But for the person who's just struggling with the daily, daily life routine, daily opportunities coming in, then they're able to engage their cognition, they have the energy, and so they can use it. So, types of coping. Sorry about that. There are two types of coping. It's actually avoidance coping and active coping. Sorry for self-actualization. Please, I will adjust the slides accordingly. So avoidance coping, how you know you are in avoidance coping is when you find yourself ruminating on the issue. What is ruminating? When you have this constant thought in your mind, you cannot stop thinking about your research, but you find yourself paralyzed. You're not moving, and it is creating all these feelings that, you're feeling like you're doubting yourself, you don't know where to start. And it ends up being that you are now overwhelmed to a point that you cannot move, you cannot make a decision. So that's how you know you are avoiding. So how else do you know you're avoiding? It's procrastination. When you know you're supposed to do something and you keep pushing it, either because you want it to be perfect, either you feel like you don't have the tools to do it, but you're not observing the timelines. And that's what we talked about. Sometimes supervisors really struggle with students when they don't observe the timelines. And maybe you missed one timeline, and then from there, you just felt that maybe this is not for you. And then you just, I was told about how such a huge percentage of graduate students after their coursework, they actually just disappear. I don't know how many of you actually disappeared at that point, but that could be an example of avoidance coping, that you just felt truly overwhelmed and you're just like, right now I cannot handle this. I'd like to step away and maybe I'll come back. Then there is also passive aggressiveness. So how does this work? When somebody asks you about, bado hauja graduate, bado hujamaliza masters, you get so triggered because this is something that has been on your mind. You've been ruminating, you've been procrastinating. And then there is that element of judging yourself to the point of now it triggers this anger response. And we know with anger, it is just what you can see, it's like the iceberg model of anger, but it is just what you can see at the top. But underneath anger, there could be shame, there could be disappointment, there could be hurt, there could be all these emotions that you end up having that now trigger this anger response. So the other type of coping is active coping. So active coping has two elements: that you engage your brain, so there is a cognition of the reality. So it has to start with self-awareness. So you're actually aware of, wow, what is actually happening to me in this moment, that, I am really struggling with this. And that's what I was trying to trigger, that you start from recognizing what is actually disturbing you. And then you do a cognitive reframe. So maybe a cognitive reframe today was like, you know what, I'm just gonna show up to this training. I don't know what we will share, but I'm open to see if it can actually help you. So that is a cognitive reframe that you actually made for you to be able to partake in this training. And then once you are able to make that change in cognition, then now it induces behavior change. So you do something about it. And that's what we are talking about, a flea step or a baby step, or however small a step you want to take up. But that is what active coping is. So those are the two differences of avoidance coping and active coping. So maybe up to there, someone can share a comment of what they are learning, if this is, something that they have observed in their life. Just one comment. Aurelia?
Thank you, Josephine. Those two types of coping, I didn't know there were types. active and avoidance coping. Yes, we have Conrad saying, haha, he's laughing. I'm an avoidance coper. Thanks for sharing that, Conrad. We can relate a lot with that. That's exactly me, Nora. Yes, I suppose you also mean avoidance coping. The times we have procrastinated, people still ask you, bado unasoma? For those who are not from Kenya, in Swahili, bado unasoma means people are still asking you, you're still in school, you have not graduated. And we feel a lot of anger against those people. So yeah, there are those two reflections, Josephine. People are relating more with the avoidance coping.
All right, great. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And it takes, you're triggering your awareness. Even, and I'd like for you to jot that down, that this is what you actually do. For example, when it comes to avoidance coping, you will find yourself employing perfectionism. Perfectionism is a displacement tactic. So maybe your master's, that journey just is too overwhelming. And so you take that energy you could have put in the master's and you take it somewhere else. So you find yourself being overly critical in one area of your life. So it could be at work, umekuwa mkali sana, at home, umekuwa mkali sana. And all this is attributed to the fact that there is something within you that is telling you there is something that you've not handled, and it will show up unconsciously or consciously in how you interact with others. So sometimes you might find that in this journey, if you employ avoidance coping, the one thing that is a telltale sign that you're employing avoidance coping is that your relationships, they actually suffer because you're not able to communicate your needs. You've not acknowledged them yourself. And so if you've not acknowledged them yourself, it is difficult to even express them. And so even as we are going into this to understand coping, I'd really want you to open your mind to how to create self-awareness in different ways with different tools so that we are able to have a clear picture of what we are struggling with. Okay. So, working with young adults has really taught me a lot. I have worked with young adults I work with young adults from age 20 to age 35. So how can I confidently say that I work with that age group and there is no master's in young adult development here in Kenya? I think I've found very few. They are very scarce, right? And so I embarked on a journey of research. When I was at Amani Counseling, I went in saying that I want to be a counselor for young adults. It was because of my experience working with a program called I Choose Life in campus. So I really connected with, challenging my self-awareness at a young age. And it really helped me have, a good journey at Kenyatta University, where it had not such a good rep about girls going there. So I was really scared of what would happen to me. But joining this group allowed me to be very aware of the choices I wanted to make. And so it has always been something within me. Even when I did nutrition, I just felt I need to do something to work with young adults. So I did my paper on effects on the transition into young adulthood among students between 18 to 24 years. So I got a chance to interact with that group and understand what does that transition trigger in them in regards to mental health. Please don't look at my topic with critical eyes. Yes, I passed. That's what matters for now. But then when I was now in Amani Institute, we were told that we have to come up with a social innovation project. And I was like, since I'm doing this concurrently, let me understand another group. So the other group was now the people who have graduated, they're in jobs, they're in their first jobs, and they're dealing with a lot of self-doubt. They are in relationships that they're not happy about. So I can actually say, I've gone through the journey of working with someone from when they enter campus to when they're about 35, when they've settled down, they have like one child or are not married. So I started this framework to really understand what are critical skills that they need in order to make sense of their world. And so that is what I'll be sharing with you. That is what I'm hoping that we can borrow from that framework that I made, that you give someone, young adults don't have a lot of money to go to therapy. So I had to come up with a way, use social innovation to sort of compress the skills that they need in order for them to thrive, until at a point, they reach a point when they figured out their careers, they have good jobs, and now they can afford to do, the whole 9 years of therapy. So it first starts with self-concept. It's about clarifying your values. It is said that values are the headlamps that point you towards, one direction. They show you what is important to you. So in your journey of research, is what you're doing actually important to you? For me, it was very important to me because I really wanted to work with this group of people. And my goal was to make sure that I learn as much as possible, because there are no masters that I can access right now that deal with that population, so that I can actually understand. So even the challenges that I faced, I was looking into quarter life crisis, which was like, I was told by my lecturer, that's a very new knowledge kind of thing. It is not here. And I really struggled with that, but I held on because it was part of my value that I really wanted to understand this group. So I'll be sharing values clarification resources. And the thing about values, I know it's a very, sort of mysterious concepts. And some people, I'm sure where you are now, you've gone through a value clarification exercise. And what happens? Someone is given a list and you're told to tick what resonates with you. But my approach is not that, because I know the external voices are very loud. They'll ask you, you don't want to have integrity. Does integrity mean nothing to you? Like this, those will be the conversations in your head. I remember during a values clarification exercise, I did my values. I was like 25 and I was like adventure, health, all those nice things that, as a young person, I was excited about. And then I peeped at my neighbor and she had respect for God. And I was like, what is wrong with me that I don't have respect for God? And I really judged myself. How is that not of value to me? But the moment I was able to go to therapy and have a moment to really process, where my values come from, they are advised by my lived experiences, by how my parents raised me, by the institutions that I learned in, by my friends, by the things I read about, the things that, I care about. So your values cannot be minimized to a list. Your values actually come from your lived experiences. And that's why it's very important to now make time to reflect. So now I can confidently say that I have 2 non-negotiable values. One is trustworthiness. And trustworthiness for me, I like for my clients to define that word, what it means to them, not what the dictionary says. Trustworthiness for me starts with me trusting myself. It has to start with me. And trustworthiness, it has to be like I do right by the people around me, by my environment, by my community. That is what trustworthiness means to me. The other value for me is courage, that I will endeavor to do things even though I have no clue what will happen after. Courage is me being in this presentation, asking myself, okay, I have a diploma and a postgraduate certificate. And yeah, that was how I designed my master's. And I'm here speaking to postgraduate researchers. But I have to trust myself that my experience has been real, and the things that I used, they actually were helpful and they changed my life. So your values are connected to your strength. So for me, when I say trustworthiness, it is easy to trust myself. It is easy to be trustworthy. I have been a treasurer. I have been, at work, given money or been trusted with a project. I've had people say about me that, if you leave it to Josephine, she will deliver. Of course, I'm not perfect, but I know that is something associated with me. When it comes to courage, it's something associated with the decisions that I've made. I told you, I moved from Nairobi to Nanyuki, and I decided if I'm working remotely, then I can work from anywhere. Let me try and see what that actually could bring in my life. So I'm going to stop there for a moment. And I want us to reflect on these three things. How can you identify your values? So I have this simple exercise when I ask my clients to think about a regret that they have. You can jot that down so that you are able to write under it, a regret that you have. And then there is also, something, a decision that you made that you are really proud of yourself, that actually changed your life. So this is something that, shifted, how you are living your life. And the last one is a relationship that you had to sever, like a relationship that you had to stop. It could be with a place, like a workplace, a community, or it could be with a person. Like someone you just felt, I cannot carry this person or this space into my goals, into my future. So I want us to take a moment and to just write those things and see what common theme is coming out.
Let's be on mute a bit. Josephine,
Yes.
You said a regret. I just want to put on chat a regret.
A regret you have.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a decision that you made that changed your life, the better, of course. And then a relationship that you had to stop, whether it's with a space like work or a community, or with a person.
Okay, they are there, good people. You can now put them on chat.
I'm going to give you 3 minutes to just jot down whatever comes to mind. And you don't even have to write the experience. You can write, what's the theme? What's the common theme that's coming to mind? Is it, I don't want to give external influence, but you sit with that and reflect. Yeah. If there is a need for an example, feel free to ask as well.
There's someone in a very noisy place. It feels like a bathroom. Please be muted so that we don't hear your secrets.
All right, we can resume now. I hope everyone has something jotted down, just a theme that's coming. And if someone is willing to share, just the theme, the title of the theme, like what has come out as a repetitive word that shows up in your regret, that shows up in the choices that you made, and in the relationships that you chose to sever. Maybe we can have that, just one share. If nobody is sharing, we can move on.
I think no one is sharing. Josephine, maybe you can give an example of what someone would pick out.
Yes. Okay, so for example, I can give an example with myself. So when I decided to change my career, I really regretted not having, made that choice earlier. That, I waited up until I was maybe 31 to make that choice, to say, what do I actually want to do with my life? I had done nutrition, I couldn't get a job, and that environment was hurting my mental health because I was dealing with malnutrition. So I then made the choice at that time to be like, I'm not gonna think about what people will say. I'm just gonna, do something about it. And that's how I landed on doing psychology. And then when it comes to relationships that I had to sever, I had to give up trying to, have those superficial relationships with my classmates in nutrition because I wanted a job. And I had to stop that way of thinking and be like, okay, do I actually like specific people that I can build that relationship? So not to have that kind of relationship that it's like, hey, how are you doing? And maybe I don't even, we are not even close, we don't share values. And so that is an example I can give. All right, so I'm going to delve into self-care. I know this is a very romanticized topic, and everyone, when they hear self-care, it turns to, having a bubble bath or something. But self-care is really about listening to your body. You have to listen to your body and what it needs. So that is what we started with this morning. When I told you to take 5 minutes, listen, check in with your body and check your environment. That, there's someone who was cold, they wore socks. There's someone who needed, a drink to hydrate, and they did that. So it is, how do you deal with the daily wear and tear? Because sometimes if you're going through it, like you're going through a really difficult transition, if you don't take care of yourself, you can end up succumbing to depression and anxiety. What do I mean? If, for example, maybe someone has gone through a change at work, they've lost their job, and then they just stop doing anything. They stop speaking to anyone. They're isolating themselves. They are not doing the 3 things to really maintain your body, like to eat, to sleep, and to move your body. So you'll end up finding that when you don't do those things, you start now succumbing to these thoughts that you've created in your mind. And so I'll be sharing some of the tools that I've found beneficial. And some of them are, your thinking style, right? There are many types of thinking styles. Like there are those who rationalize. There are those who overgeneralize. There are those who see everything as awful. It's called awfulizing. There are those who see things as black and white. So are you aware of how you automatically interpret your world? Another coping skill is boundaries. Maybe you're very good with boundaries at work. Like when you decide to leave at work, you can do it. But maybe in your relationships, you don't have boundaries. Maybe with your time, you are struggling with boundaries. Maybe with your finances, that you're helping everybody else, family members, and forgetting to prioritize yourself. So these are some of the skills I'll be sharing with you to really delve into, to really interact with, so that you create that awareness. Where are you actually struggling? Which life skill? And I know when you hear life skills, they're like, we are grown adults, but we can always learn. And the idea of life skills, it's about life, and we all go through life and we need skills. And what is it about skills? We identify the skill we need, we practice, and then we get good at it. So I'll also share resources about self-compassion. It is basically, how do you speak to yourself in novel times? Because sometimes we don't know, something happens that has never happened to anyone and you have no idea how to deal with it. So self-compassion is a coping tool that is used for novel circumstances, which is something like, the pandemic. The generation that we are living now, maybe we've never experienced a pandemic at that magnitude. So how do we talk to ourselves that, just because you're not coping well, maybe you lost your job, it doesn't mean that you will not succeed later. You are able to ask for help. You don't isolate yourself. You are able to know that this is something that's not just happening to you, it's actually happening to the world. So I'm going right into self-actualization. So self-actualization is about how are you clear about your goals and where you want to go. And I like to look at goals like this. When there are those things that have been serious obstacles to you getting where you need to go. So for example, it could be you have a self-esteem issue. I will share mine, and I know it will seem petty, but it was important to me in how it was affecting me. My skin color, right? I used to have such a struggle with the fact that I am chocolate brown, as I call it now, because I have sisters who are fair-skinned. And I remember someone when I was young told me, mnafanana kasoro huyu ni mweusi. And I was a teenager and I carried that, and it made me feel less important. So how did it affect my life? I never used to, sit at the front. I was just like, maybe let me let others take charge. Let me let others be the ones to be seen. And it really affected me and how I was engaging with the world. The moment I went to therapy and my therapist asked me, list down things that you don't like and things that you like, I very excitedly came up with a very long list of things that I didn't like. And on that list, she asked me, what can you actually change? And I remember thinking, if I bleach now, I'm too old. People will know that I bleached my skin. So I can't deal with that. So I just accept. And when I accepted it, it totally changed how I used to engage with people. I became more confident. I started looking at people in the eye when I was speaking to them. And that's how I was able to, do social innovation. I was doing the course with people from all over the world. I was confident, and I was reminded of, yes, there are issues of colorism, and it actually affects opportunities. So what I was going through, it might look small to someone, but how it was impacting me, it was important. So even for you, I'd like for you to identify what is that issue that if you resolved, you could actually step into your aspirational goals that you will just soar and nothing will stop you. Right. So just take a moment to jot something down that has come to you. That one thing that maybe has come out as feedback. People are like, why are you not confident? You have all these skills. Why don't you advertise your services? Why do you, So look even into the feedback that you've gotten from people who actually know you, who actually care about you, and jot that down. All right, I can see our time. We are at 10:20. So the next slides were about the tools, the pitfalls of, coming up with a coping plan. And I just want to go right into the levels of a coping plan. So this is very important to understand, because how do you now intentionally, we are talking about this at a very macro level, how do you now come into your life, into your daily life to actually make this actionable? So I start off the year with a theme. And this is something that has been talked about by a psychologist called Benjamin Hardy. I've followed him since he was just doing his master's. Now he's a doctor, he's an author, and I've been communicating with him. Like when I decided to do counseling, I was like, wow, this is a guy who's doing something I want to do. And something that he came up with other authors was design trumps willpower. So he does not believe in relying on willpower. And that is something that is very important to note. The moment you wake up and wait for your brain to tell you what to do, then that day might as well be lost, because your brain needs to have a little bit of structure. So coming up with a yearly theme, you're like, this year is the year of intellectual, awareness. And then you're like, what are my 3 priorities? What do I want to focus on? Do I want to focus on family? Do I want to focus on my health? So having those priorities. Then quarterly, he says after every 90 days, he evaluates. He takes 2 weeks to evaluate what he's been doing. And this is where he looks at the goals. He even identifies the things that he didn't plan on achieving, but he did. And this is something that we normally omit, that you had this idea of what you wanted to achieve, and maybe you gained something, but because you're so focused on what you wanted, you miss out on what you actually achieved without intending to. And that could be something useful to you. Then monthly, how do you break down those quarterly priorities into monthly? What are you focusing on this month? So if you say that you want to finish your dissertation, is it that you say that this month I'm working on problem, the problem statement, and this and this and this, and these are the resources I'll need to do that. So you are walking into the month intentionally. And weekly, that you can sit with yourself for some hours, maybe on a Sunday, whenever your week starts, and you just take a moment to say, okay, last week happened, what did I actually achieve, and how do I move into this week intentionally? Then daily, this is the critical one, because daily there are things that happen that you can't control. These plans are not set in stone. So how, something that has worked for me is that I have a night routine and a morning routine. So in my night routine, I write 3 things, 3 priorities for the next day. So when I wake up in the morning, I don't have that, indecision, because I allowed my brain to have time to process what I want to do and even come up with better strategies. So when I sleep, I'm actually engaging my brain to figure out ways of dealing with what I want to deal with. And so when I do that in the morning, even if someone has another plan, I still maintain my plan. I'm able to do my 3 things and still have space to engage with what other people want from me. So I also engage in gratitude, that I write 3 things I'm grateful for. This allows me to really see the things that are working, because sometimes life can slap you really hard and you can forget to really appreciate the things that are happening. You forget to appreciate the relationships that you have, your support system, the people that are seeing you and what you're going through, the people who are making your life easier. So yes, that is how I process that. Maybe I would like to stop at that because of time and give a moment to ask 3 or 4 questions. Then we can see how to proceed from there. Aurelia?
Yes, Josephine. Thank you. We are proceeding on well, learning a lot about ourselves. Yes, you can, we have some time to finish the presentation. So don't worry about that. You can finish, because we really want to use those tools to help us in our journey. At AIDA Africa, we say the personal is as important as the professional. What you do to your personal self shows up a lot in who you are as a profession. So those 2 spheres have to be taken care of. Do we have a question at this moment before we wind up on the slides? So some of the reflections people were having were about having difficulty setting boundaries, and just even how to set boundaries. And I think those are some of the tools that you will help us with. How do I learn to set and communicate my boundaries? I think this is one of the things I learned from Josephine. I had to go through a session with her. How do I communicate my boundaries? Because sometimes we are really afraid to step into that. And then also someone reflecting on uncertainty is the theme that they can see coming up from the 3 questions. They hate being uncertain because it feels like doing life without handles. Yes, so that is also an important value for one of our members, being more loyal to others than to myself. There's also that reflection. I think for most of us, we give of ourselves a lot,
Yes.
and remain little for us. So we also have a reflection, how to navigate a toxic work environment. This is a question. I think there's a question from Risi. How do you navigate a toxic work environment when we talk about coping? And
okay. All right. So thank you for those reflections. And truly, it's a shared experience of, it's something that so many people struggle with. You know, our culture has taught us that, you know, we have to be respectful of elders. We have to be respectful of those who came before us. And so this is a coping skill that we never really get to interact with. So there are two elements. There is boundaries, and there is also feedback, giving and receiving feedback. And so one of the ways I explain boundaries to my clients, because I like to keep it as simple as possible, a boundary is about knowing how far you will go. And most people, what they do, the mistake that they make is to talk about how far you can come. I don't know if you're getting the difference. This is the far you can come. Because the moment you say this is the far you can come, you're delegating the responsibility to the person to figure out how far they can come. So it's not intentional. So imagine a boundary as you knowing when to close a window to not let in the mosquitoes, and when to open a window to let in fresh air. So boundaries, you have to be self-aware. You have to be present in the moment. And there are types of boundaries. So you have healthy boundaries, you have porous boundaries, and rigid boundaries. So this is the resource I'll be sharing with you, so you can delve in deeper. So imagine the rigid boundary being, you have a home, you have the electric fence, mbwakali, the K-apple, you have the perimeter wall, and inside you have the sisal, you know, perimeter that nobody can come in. So you become someone who is not flexible, who does not have psychological flexibility. Porous boundaries are now when you find yourself, you have this home that has a hole in the fence, the gate is normally not always locked, so people can go in and people can come out. And that's why I was saying, you will find that you may have boundaries in one aspect and not have boundaries in another aspect. So maybe with your children, you have boundaries. You figured out these are the values I'm raising them with. You know, maybe with your family members, you have boundaries. You're like, this is the much I can support you this month. But when it comes to work, depending on your relationships there, maybe you're working with somebody with a personality disorder, you find yourself struggling. You find yourself, it's like, wow, you are not able to figure this out. So understanding what boundaries are, the types of boundaries, and the areas in which you need to set boundaries allows you to have that awareness. Now, I'm going to talk about giving and receiving feedback. So there is a model that we learned in social innovation that I find very amazing. The greatest fear that people have when they give feedback is that they are afraid that they will get emotional. So you're giving feedback because something hurt you, but you don't want to look dramatic. You don't want to share the gravity of what they have done to you and how it affects you. And so people will shy away. And there is also the fear that you'll be told that you're being too much, that did not happen. So there is that fear. So the AID model works on how do you give feedback based on facts and really communicate clearly. So it is also a resource I will share. So the first step is state the action. So if someone, for example, maybe at work, they keep on, you have a meeting, but they keep on sending work to you on WhatsApp, right? You know that you communicate via email, then on weekends, they are communicating to you on WhatsApp. Maybe it could be a boss. So, and that is upsetting you because that is your time, your personal time. So how do you give feedback about that? And knowing that this is a sensitive situation, what is the action? Can you set the action? You have been sending me work-related messages on WhatsApp. we agreed, when we agreed, I prefer email and during the time of work. Okay. What is the impact? That is step 2. What's the impact of this? How is this really affecting you? And this is where you need that point of reflection. Is it that you feel that, that the boundaries are being crossed? You feel that someone does not value your time with your family. Someone is overlooking, like figure out what is it that it's hurting you and let it be a fact that, yeah, that is my time with my family. It gives me real anxiety because I'm like, how come we were not able to anticipate this earlier? And then the last part, what do you want the person to do moving forward? So you're giving person the desired behavior. It's about the desired behavior. So the desired behavior is next time, if you can hold off on any, I'd prefer communication is left on email only. And if there is an absolute emergency, you can always, send a text or something, but you figure out what would be a desired behavior. So I found that when I've worked with young adults and they give this feedback, and especially to parents, to bosses, they are at an entry-level job and it's toxic and they don't know how to navigate it, it normally works because it's based on research and you've communicated your needs. It's based on facts, and you've communicated your needs clearly. So if someone has a problem with that, then it's not on you. It's how they are taking it and you have no control from that. I don't know, for the person who asked about feedback, boundaries, I sort of mashed up that answer. Maybe you can tell me if it is satisfactory.
Yes, thank you. Let's know if that responds to the questions on boundaries, on toxic, and I've written down there, how do you give feedback? So Josephine, I don't know if I've captured it well, mentioning the action that they've done, how that action affects you, and what is the desired behavior moving forward. And I think this is very useful, even speaking up to people in authority, even I think to some extent to our supervisors. We can let them know that what is the action you delayed. There was a delay in receiving feedback. How did this affect me? Now I have to pay more fees. I've had to wait in anxiety. I cannot graduate. What would you like? And I like the point you said that what people do with the feedback you give them, it's really on them. It's really on them sometimes. It's for them to process. But I think if you make it that clear for someone, most people will listen in and will really hear you. Thank you, Risi. Then there was one more question, Josephine, before you leave. Yes. Before we leave, before you wind up, sorry, kindly share a few reminders on practical ways of dealing with procrastination. How do we deal? Procrastination is stuck on our back. How do we get it off our backs?
Okay. Procrastination, as I like to call it, it's the big P. Everybody struggles with that. And it is good to understand, where is your procrastination coming from? Because there are many reasons. That it could be coming from perfectionism, that you are feeling that something has to be right. And if, and that is connected to black and white thinking. That's why I was saying it is very important to know which life skill could you be struggling with, that you view something like, if you don't have the right supervisor, then you're doomed. And then you are stuck at that. And so you procrastinate, you stick at this, that I don't have a good supervisor. I've talked to people who've worked with them before, and they've said he or she is not a good supervisor. There's delay, there's all this, and then you get stuck at that. Okay, so there is procrastination because you don't actually have you don't have the skills, right? And so it's about understanding. Is it at skill level, like I have no idea on how to do this? And so you are waiting. It's like when you have a presentation at work and you've been trusted with, a big project, and people have just trusted you and you have no idea where to start. And that's why I was saying employing self-compassion. It's very important, because self-compassion deals with those times when you have no idea which coping tool to use. You talk to yourself as a friend would. A friend will tell you, hey, by the way, this is new. Yeah? This is new, and it is okay that it is new. You cannot know everything under the sun. So what do you need? The next step, don't isolate yourself, because procrastination comes now in isolating yourself. You get yourself to a point where you have analysis paralysis. You have looked and looked, but what are you looking at? You are looking at skills. You need skills, and there's no way the skills will come to you without taking action. So understanding that you need to ask for help. And also the other element of self-compassion is about telling yourself that so many people, are given tasks at work that they don't know, but it is a learning experience. And that's why jobs have, you have a team, you have your peers in the same industry. And so it's not something that's just happening to you. So I could tell you for now, and I'll share more resources, that those two, identifying is your procrastination about perfectionism, and if your procrastination is about lack of skills, then you employ self-compassion.
Thank you very much, Josephine. Final question from Risi. Could you shed light on how to be more assertive while maintaining compassion and not changing your personality? And then Bello says, which books would you recommend for today's session? So I think just 1 minute for those two, and then your closing remarks. And I think we've really gotten some awareness.
Okay. So, sorry, you could repeat the first part?
The first part was, how do you, could you show how to be more assertive while maintaining compassion and not changing your personality?
Yeah, all right. So I know so many of us struggle with being assertive. And I like to tell my clients, you cannot be assertive if you don't know the ground you're standing on. We call assertiveness standing your ground, right? So if you're not aware of the ground you're standing on, there is no way you'll be assertive. And that's when your feedback will sometimes be not, it won't have clarity. It won't have, someone will not understand what exactly that you're saying. So you'll find that when you clarify your values, you are able to first understand yourself, to understand what's important for you, to understand how to choose the people around you, your nearest and dearest, that if you believe in trust, that even your partner believes in trust, and so you avoid so many conflicts. If you believe in trust and you're in an organization that has, doing shoddy stuff behind the scenes, that you are able to pick that up and know the conflict that can come from that. So how do you build this foundation to stand on? When I'm in a point of conflict, I normally ask myself, which value of mine is being betrayed, right? So for me, sometimes, most often, it is trust. So thinking about someone I want to collaborate with. And then we have meetings, and then I see maybe they've communicated something without my permission, and it does not reflect, how I view my brand. So in that moment, I'll not be like, hey, how could you do that without asking me? I'll be like, trust is really important to me. And how I experience it is that, communication is open. I like timely feedback, and I'm always available. So I'd really like to do right by myself, right by my brand, and right by the people I serve. So you see, you have ground to stand on. And that's why values clarification is very important. It's an organic process. And so it is picking out the common themes. Like today, you wrote down the common theme. Pick it out in the conversations you have at work, at home. What is coming out that it is very important to you, so that when you're able to pick it, your feedback now, it is not emotional. It is at the cognitive level, that this is how you broke my trust, and that had an impact, and this is the desired behavior. You see how it feeds the feedback model. So that's what I would say about that. About the books, yes, I have a lot of books. When we were doing social innovation, we did not just look at the problems in the society. We also did something called the inner journey, that you as a founder, and this is something that connects with what Ada is doing, there is your personal connection to the problem. And how do you work on your personal challenge so that they don't show up in your professional work? So even here, how do you work on your personal challenges or personal struggles that they don't show up, or you are able to cope with them in your academic journey? So that is what I would say for that. And I'll be carefully selecting, from the things that you've pointed out, like what resources I can share, books. And also I love doing Pinterest captions because I found that when you send someone like a whole page, they'll not interact with it. But it's something you can open on WhatsApp, you look at it. When you're going to a meeting, you're like, hey, what was boundaries? And then you look at it, you're like, okay. What was the 8 model? You remind yourself quickly. So that's how I like to share feedback. Yes, that's how what I can say for now. Yeah.
Wow, thank you so much, Josephine. I think let's hear on chat, just a takeaway. How was this for you? Really stepping into intentional living. Life is not happening, like you're in control. You can give feedback about how you're feeling. You can share your boundaries. You're grounded on your values. Am I hanged? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So how was the session for you? You can put on chat, you can unmute. Josephine will share resources, some even on WhatsApp. She said she has them even on, she's designed them even on Pinterest, something you can carry with you to remind you of some of these skills that can help you navigate your journey. Yes, I can see it was interesting. Any other reflection, anything that you're taking away from this session? Quite an enlightening session, yes. And I remember Josephine, she had a session with me on clarifying values, and I kept saying, what are values? And the minute she said, the minute you're in conflict, always ask yourself, what value is being compromised here? And that's when now you'll be able to come from a place of strength. Thank you, very insightful. Please, when the tools are used, use them. Use them, because we say the personal and the professional are intertwined, How you show up at work, how you show up is really very, it's really on who you are. Who you are is very important, taking care of that who you are. Do you have any final words, Josephine, as people are commenting on the session? Final famous words? And I'm seeing good feedback, very enlightening, very insightful. We've kept a strong 30 people here ready to learn. Great presentation. Any last famous words? Josephine, are you with us? Or maybe I think she was kicked out. Okay, please fill in the feedback form. And yes, looking forward for another session. Definitely, we shall invite her. I told you she's the one who is helping us in the Journal Club sort of figure out how can we really do a better mentorship program. And she's been talking to a few members to really understand their journey. And it's really awesome working with her through this. Jackie says, as a lecturer, the demands we have are more, yet you still have to do research, write papers. I still remember to take my macro thinking time more seriously. Yes. Just when we are waiting for your final famous words, as I was picking the feedback from people, and you can see it's really, really positive. They'd like to have you again. So over to you, to your final famous words.
Final and famous. I would say that the journey to coming up with a personal coping plan, it's about experimenting. And we really have to be open to experimenting, because you can't know if something works until you try it. And it's about being open to trying, the different ways and listening to your body. I cannot emphasize enough. If you have your values, so you know the ground you stand on, and you're listening to your body, that when you meet someone, you feel like your body falls to the pit, your stomach is falling to the pit of your, okay, I don't know that saying, but yes, you understand what I'm saying, that your body senses what is going on. Listen to it. Look at the times you've made decisions and you've not listened to your body. Sometimes we get burnt out, we get agitated because we've not listened to our bodies and given it the care. So I want you to remember your self-concept. What are your values? What are your strengths? That is where you stand, and then your self-care. How do you deal with everyday wear and tear, everyday life's challenges, everyday life's transitions, of things both positive and negative happening to you, and how do you cope actively with them? And then your goals. If truly you have something that you've not processed, like a trauma, and this is the thing about trauma, there are traumatic things to happen to you. So there's a difference between traumatic things and trauma. Traumatic things are, sexual abuse, you went through loss, something like that. But trauma is what happens within you. For me, it was something as small as somebody saying, I am dark, and me internalizing that I am not worthy, and it affecting me and putting me in this, non-abundance kind of lifestyle, when I was just like, I'll do the bare minimum. But now, when I was able to process it, and this is not something that you can just process in a session, I really encourage people, you don't need to be depressed or anxious to go to therapy. Even those obstacles that maybe to others may seem small, go process them and get on with your life. Get on to your aspirational goals. See what you can become, because truly there is so much within you. So I'll stop at that, and I will be happy to share all the resources. And I've picked maybe on the topics that you really want resources on. I will look at simple resources, and for those who love books. And then, yeah, I'd love to pick it up from there. I normally do individual sessions for young adults. So if you're in the bracket of 20 to 35, you can come for values clarification. I also do something called courageous conversations, where I employ solution-focused therapy. So solution focused is when you come in, you are very clear on the issue. So for example, the person who said, how do you navigate a toxic workplace? So that is the issue you want to deal with. So for 4 weeks, we focus on that and the coping skills that you can come up with to deal with that. And then you have a bonus session to look at, did the strategies that we employed, did they actually work? And then I also do trainings on coping skills for different organizations, preferably working with young adults. But I'm not an ageist. I just, I'm comfortable. That is my comfort. But of course, as I grow beyond what I am now, I'll venture into that, other ages. And also I do what I'm doing with ADA, wellness-led program design. So I used to work in a mental health, mental health consultancy, and that was my work, to design programs that really target the whole person. So I am very grateful for even this opportunity to talk about my journey and to talk about the things I've experimented with my clients since 2020, and to hear that, you've picked something from that. And I'm very proud of you for being open-minded to say, I don't know this person, I'm just gonna show up and see what will happen. So you're already in the experimenting mode, and that's amazing. And that's the right attitude. So that's all I can say for now.
Thank you. Those are final, famous words. So thank you. We will share her contact for those who may want to see her privately for her sessions. But for us, let me just say, we are really grateful from the Journal Club. Thank you for speaking to us in such a powerful way and allowing us to even know tools that we can rely on. Sometimes we don't even know there are tools We don't even know there are things we can use to actually feel better about ourselves and our journeys. So we are so grateful. We will share them all with you, and we will share the contact. Risi, maybe you can put your contact on chat, Josephine, now for anyone who may want. And I just want to wish you good life, good health, and you can live at your own pleasure. If you want to say something, also now you can say it. But from our end, we are grateful and we are done for today. Yes. So share your contact and